Hey everyone, we're back with a new story and I hope you like it. Our channel is new and I really need your support. If this video reaches 1,000 likes, I'll share even stranger and longer stories. So please press like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Now let's start the story. The person in the picture is named Medhat. Imagine praying to God to bless you with a child. And when he grows up, you pray to God to get rid of him. Medhat is the perfect example of an ungrateful son, and we will hear his story in this tale. In the Helwan area, Mr. Kamal, who has been married for over 25 years, has lived and resided in the same area all his life. He is a wealthy man with properties and lives a very good life with his family and children. Since graduating from university, he has been working in the banking sector, gradually advancing in his career until he reached a very high position in one of the most important banks in Egypt. He lives very well with his wife and children, and like any household, there are natural disputes between the spouses. Due to these disputes, his wife applied for immigration to the United States. The immigration was intended for the entire family, not just his wife, but she didn't want to stay in Egypt at all. All the immigration papers submitted were approved except for one person in the family, Medhat. This was because the embassy found that his behavior was not proper or they didn't like his attitude much, so there was an issue specifically with Medhat's paperwork. Unlike his entire family, Medhat, 22 years old, was in his final year studying tourism and hotels, failing academically and socially. He was completely different from his family, but very skilled in associating with the wrong crowd, those who were failures and troublemakers with no future. He knew how to talk to them and live well among them. At first, it wasn't obvious, and everyone in the neighborhood felt like they were one big family until certain incidents made people realize that this family was one thing and Medhat was entirely different. Before we continue his story, it's clear that Medhat chose to live this way because there was nothing in the family that should have led him to this point. Medhat's relationship with his father was very strange. Mr. Kamal always tried to maintain a good relationship with his son, but Medhat insisted on being a troublesome person. However, Mr. Kamal's paternal feelings always prevailed, so whatever Medhat asked for, whether money or anything else, his father provided. Eventually, Mr. Kamal noticed that Medhat's failures were increasing, and he feared he might be the reason due to spoiling his son too much. He decided it was necessary to change his approach and behavior towards Medhat. This is where Medhat's sister played a crucial role, always balancing the relationship between the father and the son, unlike the mother who lived in the US and sometimes visited during holidays. Medhat relied heavily on his sister for money or to influence their father for any requests he had, and his sister's financial support was much greater. His father was very proud of her because after graduating from university, she worked at one of the most important companies and achieved success in her job. His father always wished that Medhat would take her as a role model. At the beginning of 2012, Medhat leaves in the morning for his college, his sister heads to work, and their father, Mr. Kamal, is at home preparing to go to his job as well. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door. Mr. Kamal opens it to find two young men who have come to rent the garage that Mr. Kamal had advertised for rent. They said they saw the ad posted on the building's entrance and wanted to finalize the arrangement. Mr. Kamal welcomes them, but is soon shocked when they pull out a knife, threatening to kill him and demand to know where the bank cards and money are. They wanted to steal a few things. They take the bank cards and cash available in the house, then strike Mr. Kamal on the head, causing him to lose consciousness. They continue stealing a few more items from the house, including a video camera. Exactly half an hour later, Mr. Kamal regains consciousness and calls his daughter at her workplace, informing her of what happened. She leaves her job immediately and rushes home, horrified by what she sees. Shortly after, Medhat returns from college, shocked to find security personnel at the house. He learns from his father and the security officers what had happened and stays with them throughout the investigation and crime scene inspection. The officers reassure Mr. Kamal that they will soon catch the perpetrators. Mr. Kamal informs the officers that this is the first time he has seen the two intruders, but had suspected that something like this might happen because he is a wealthy and well-known man in the area, making him a likely target for theft. After the security officers complete their procedures and leave, Medhat and his sister sit with their father, comforting him, thankful that the situation wasn't worse and that he is unharmed. Mr. Kamal, while talking to his two children, expresses his gratitude that he regained consciousness quickly and managed to call the bank to cancel all his cards, ensuring that the thieves wouldn't benefit from them. Neither Mr. Kamal nor his daughter noticed that Medhat's facial expressions changed upon hearing this information. Medhat, being quite clever, managed to control his expressions and didn't reveal anything. Due to this incident, Mr. Kamal decided to increase the security of the house and the building overall. He installed iron doors at the main entrance, the apartment door, and the rooftop door to make it very difficult to enter the house. A whole month passes after this crime, and during this time, the security officers show Mr. Kamal several pictures of various criminals to identify the perpetrators, but unfortunately, Mr. Kamal informs them that neither of the two men who attacked him are in those pictures. One Friday morning, the whole family has a day off with no commitments. Medhat's sister plans to go out in the morning to meet her friends, while Medhat also plans to meet his friends, and their father decides to rest a bit from the week's work and might go out for a bit in the evening. By 5 p.m., Medhat's sister is surprised when Medhat calls her, greeting her warmly and suggesting they meet up. When they meet, Medhat proposes that they visit their aunt for a while and spend the day with her. His sister is delighted by the call and agrees, saying she's looking forward to seeing him. They go to their aunt's together, staying until 10 p.m. and then decide to head back home. When they arrived home and opened the door, they were shocked to find strange things in the apartment. They quickly rushed to their father's room and were horrified by what they saw. He was lying face down on the bed, covered in blood, with his hands tied, and all the contents of the cupboards and drawers were scattered on the floor. When they approached him, they found that he had been murdered. It was a gruesome scene. Medhat and his sister called for help, and neighbors gathered and entered the apartment, equally horrified by what they saw. At the same time, Medhat called the police to report the incident. The police arrived with forensic experts and crime scene investigators. The first thing they noticed was that there were no signs of forced entry into the apartment, which was unusual given the iron doors Mr. Kamal had installed after the robbery a month ago. The second observation was that while the incident was indeed a robbery, the nature of the murder indicated extreme vengeance. No one would kill in such a brutal way simply to rob. Mr. Kamal had been stabbed multiple times in the chest and abdomen, and he had also been strangled with a pillowcase tied around his neck, in addition to suffering a severe blow to the head. After examining the crime scene, the body was sent for autopsy and the police began their investigations. Meanwhile, their mother returned from America upon hearing the devastating news. The police questioned Medhat and his sister, learning that they had been at their aunt's house and returned home at 10 p.m. only to find their father dead. Upon questioning about their activities, it was confirmed that they both went out in the morning, met their friends, and then met each other at 5 p.m. before going to their aunt's house. The police discovered that the stolen items included money, some jewelry belonging to Medhat's sister, and several of Mr. Kamal's bank cards. The autopsy report revealed that Mr. Kamal had suffered 6 vengeful stab wounds and that he had struggled to escape or resist his attacker. The neck bruises indicated strangulation occurred after his death, and the severe head injury was caused by a sharp object. The police collected information about the family and reviewed the statements of Medhat and his sister, focusing particularly on Medhat. Neighbors and local residents informed the police about frequent disputes between Medhat and his father. Additionally, they discovered that Mr. Kamal had transferred most of his properties to his daughter's name due to a lack of trust in Medhat's actions, which raised suspicions about Medhat's involvement. A critical piece of information emerged when locals reported seeing Medhat leaving the house at 4 p.m., despite his claim that he left in the morning to meet his friends. This discrepancy led the police to place Medhat under closer scrutiny. They questioned how Medhat could maintain his composure, meet his sister, and spend 5 hours at their aunt's house if he was involved. The investigation expanded around Medhat, and the police uncovered a crucial detail. Medhat had made 2 phone calls at 2 p.m. on the day of the murder, one of which was to a man named Adel, a 22-year-old driver. This connection between a university student and a driver raised suspicions. The police summoned Adel and another suspect, Yaqub, for questioning, and both appeared highly nervous. Upon searching Adel's house, the police found Mr. Kamal's stolen bank cards, the previously stolen video camera, Mr. Kamal's mobile phone, and other stolen items. They also discovered a series of messages and calls from Medhat on Adel's and Yaqub's phones. Eventually, Adel and Yaqub confessed to murdering Mr. Kamal, revealing that the entire plan had been orchestrated by his son, Medhat. So here's what happened. Medhat met Yaqub and Adel at church during different prayer times when people gather. It was clear that Medhat wanted to get rid of his father by any means and was looking for someone to help him so he wouldn't appear in the picture at all. When Medhat met these two, he felt they were the most suitable people to help him with this matter. He started getting close to them and forming a friendship. They both noticed that Medhat never had money, despite knowing his father was wealthy. Medhat exploited this fact and began telling them completely false stories. He claimed that his father had affairs with many women behind his mother's back, which caused his mother to leave the country and move to America. He said his father brought these women home and had relations with them, recording them with the camera that he asked them to steal. He also asked them to steal the bank cards, as he knew the pins, and to take the money from the places he mentioned. He promised each of them £60,000 from his inheritance once his father died. During the first robbery, they went under the pretense of renting the garage, but when they encountered Mr. Kamal, they were too scared to kill him and only managed to rob the place. When Medhat returned home and found his father alive and that only a robbery had occurred, he was very angry with them. He called them, scolding them for not following through with their agreement. His anger grew when he saw his father had installed iron doors on the building entrance, the apartment door, and the roof door, realizing he needed to change the plan entirely to kill his father. This meant Medhat had to be with them during the crime so they could enter the house easily while also having a plan to avoid suspicion if it failed or succeeded. Medhat arranged everything with Yaqub and Adele, agreeing to do it on Friday morning after his sister left the house. He would wait exactly 15 minutes after she left and then tell his father he was going out to meet friends. After 5 minutes, he would return and knock on the door again, pretending he forgot something. His father, upon hearing it was Medhat, would open the door only to be surprised by two men standing next to Medhat holding knives. One would place a knife to his neck, the other to his side, threatening to kill Medhat if they weren't let inside. To Mr. Kamal, it would seem like a threat to Medhat's life, thus avoiding suspicion on Medhat if anything went wrong. Once inside, they took Mr. Kamal to the bedroom, leaving Medhat in the hallway. They repeatedly stabbed Mr. Kamal with knives until he fell onto the bed and died. After ensuring he was dead, they called Medhat to let him know it was done. The ruthless Medhat then entered the bedroom, took a pillowcase and tied it around his father's neck, strangling him to ensure he was dead, fearing a repeat of the previous incident. They then stole the money from the wardrobe and some other items Medhat had indicated. Afterward, both Yaqub and Adele left separately. By 4 p.m., Medhat left the house, called his sister to meet at their aunt's house, and spent the day with her as if everything was normal, all the while promising Yaqub and Adele the £60,000 each from his inheritance. Upon returning home with his sister, Medhat pretended to be shocked by the scene and called the police to report the crime. Medhat and the two accomplices were eventually tried and sentenced to death. Before the execution, Medhat's family disowned him, feeling no honor or pride in him and unable to believe that their son had committed such a crime. Indeed, having a son like Medhat brought nothing but shame.